Wait, no, that's just going to start us off the countdown. Whatever. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bears on Tap. I'm your host, Brandon Suarez. You can follow me on Twitter at Bdon300, and you can follow my co-host, Quintin, at ButtKissStats. As you see, we went in willy-nilly today. No countdown, just straight to the action. We're going to recap the 27-11 victory over the Seattle Seahawks, and then take a look forward into the final week of the preseason where the Chicago Bears will take on the Cleveland Browns. But first, let me check in with my co-host, Quinn. Quinn, how are you today, my guy?
Doing good. Coming to you from the Yukon here, fighting off some wild bears and some wild fish. So just having a blast.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't get my family room set up so you guys actually see the poverty-stricken area that I live in. But that is a fire background. For our live viewers, you'll have to try and figure out how you can incorporate a background like that into your Zooms or into your StreamYards or whatever you may use, because I am extremely jealous. But one thing I do know is, regardless of what people have said about the Bears, and I know it's just the preseason, look pretty damn good. Like, the players that we have picked up have looked good. The young players have played well. The Trustin Ebners of the world saw a little flash of Velus Jones, and I have a feeling Flash is probably going to be incorporated as some sort of nickname for him down the road, even though I don't know how they feel about like a 35-year-old man having a nickname, Flash. But 27-11, you go out to Seattle. Even during the broadcast, you listen, and they're still sucking Seattle off, like saying Seattle's still probably going to be a better team than the Bears. And I don't know what planet people are on where they think the Bears are so far off. I guess maybe the offensive line. But other than that, it's like, just let this young team grow into what they need to grow into. Don't set expectations for them.
I don't know what planet you're on if you're thinking that Seattle hasn't been carried by Russ and quality receivers the last 3-4 years, and the most important part of that's now gone. Like, I mean, they're not an impressive team. They're in a rough spot right now. I'm not expecting much from them this year, but
no shot. Yeah, the Bears are not who we thought they were. I mean, a lot of people were, even Bears fans. Like, I saw articles like talking about how the Bears under 6.5 was like the Calvin Ridley lead pipe lock of the season. Like, people basically going against what we said, like counteracting what we said, but like in the masses. Like, I saw it like promoted on like a book. Like, that's how far the Bears' hatred has gone this year. And just so
so I actually, I forget where I heard it, but I heard it was on one of the football shows I watch on YouTube. But they were saying on it that the sharps that they'd talked to were actually very skeptical about the Bears under. That it was like, so the public was so heavy on it, and they were worried about betting it just because the Bears' schedule is fairly easy, and they think the Bears are going to be in a lot of one-score games and be in a lot of games to the end of it, which, it doesn't mean they're a playoff team by any means, but it means that 6.5 is just not a lock, and they were avoiding it is what they were saying.
Exactly. And I think this is the perfect like stopgap year. Like, yeah, we weren't great last year. The year before, you were a fringe playoff team. They kind of just created an extra playoff team, and we happened to be them. But the way I look at it is, get the young guys the experience that they need in those big time moments. You know what I'm saying? In this new system. And you can't really do that too much in the preseason because, as we've talked about on the show, it's less reps that these first team guys are getting. And like we talked about before we even started today's show, like going into the Cleveland game, there will probably be no Justin Fields, no David Montgomery, no Darnell Mooney, or any of the first string guys for that matter. Very little on the first string. And that's fine. We know what we got going into San Francisco, and this is the perfect week for those guys at the end of the roster to put their best foot forward because, as we also talked about before the show, tomorrow, Tuesday morning, is rosters cut down to 80, and then a week from Tuesday, they cut down to 53 to the final number for the roster of the season. So, initial thoughts on some guys that you think could be, getting that phone call for the first cut going down to 80?
I don't want to, pissing anyone's Cheerios on it or, just be saying this guy doesn't have a chance. I feel like a lot of the back end of the roster stuff is probably more open than we even realize, just because those are your special teamers. Those are your guys who are going to be um, at the end of the roster. They're not going to see much play time outside of special teams. And I mean, yeah, Daz Newsome might be on there as a lap just threw on. I could see Daz Newsome making it. I could see Daz Newsome just missing. I mean, it depends on what they've shown this coaching staff, probably, in my opinion, and that's just something that we don't know. There's a lot of guys on this roster that, I mean, I consider myself a Bears fan who follows the back end of the roster and the guys who not many know that well as close as anyone. And you really don't differentiate that much right now between an AJ Thomas, a Bo P. Keys, a Demontre Tuggle. Like, these guys, it could go any number of ways based on what the coaches have seen in practice. Is kind of how I feel about it. But a few guys that I would like to see make the roster. In pre-show, you mentioned Mika Do Treadway. I think he's shown something in the preseason games, at least, that he can add up the middle for the Bears defense. And a familiar face who's been here for a while, Sam Kamara has been making noise all preseason. I've been impressed with him. And maybe it's just he's going up against twos and he doesn't look that as good against the ones in practice. But from what I've seen from him in the preseason games, in the second half of those games, which, like I said, level of competition is questionable, but he's shown a lot of power that I did not know he had. And maybe he didn't until this year. Maybe he really committed to adding some of that power to his bull rush, but I don't remember ever having seen it before. And then another guy, there was one other name Demarcus Gates. That's who I'm thinking of. I think Demarcus Gates making this roster on special teams pedigree alone.
Yeah, Demarcus Gates is one that I like. And back to the Daz Newsome point, he's polarizing because he can go and catch a 50-yard touchdown, and then he'll also, in that same game, go and drop that exact same pass that would have been a 50-yard touchdown. So it's like, which Daz Newsome are we going to get on Sunday? We don't know. You'd like to see a little bit more consistency in a guy like that, but I don't think he's just going to get thrown away just like that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, he's a guy who's sitting there between the 6th and 7th receiver spot. Now, I don't know if they're going to carry 7, and it just becomes a question of what can he do for us aside from the wide receiver position, because that's what that 6 receiver is really there for.
Go out there and be a gunner.
I'm not sure if Newsome's done any stuff on gunner.
Yeah, he probably can't tackle. I don't know why I said that. There's no. If we can't get corners that tackle, there's no shot Daz Newsome tackles.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I thought David Moore might make the team because he had a lot of special teams experience. But I don't remember what the injury situation is with him. He went down pretty roughly earlier in the preseason, I know. Imagine Tajay Sharp's making the team. I'm not sure about Pettis. They've had Pettis in there for a lot of punt returns in the preseason.
Yeah, I've seen Pettis making some plays out there. He's looked pretty good out there.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was not really worried about, but one thing I'm skeptical of is our usage of the running backs this year. So do you think with the way Khalil Herbert hasn't really performed to the way we thought he would in the preseason will affect the usage he gets in the regular season, or do you still think it's going to probably be maybe 75-20, 70-30 Montgomery?
I think it'll absolutely affect his usage until he cleans up his pass pro.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone scoffs when they hear someone talking about a young running back not getting snaps because he doesn't know what he's doing in pass pro. But it's a major part of the game. It's a major thing that keeps your quarterback protected. And it's something that we've seen him struggle with in the preseason. So as long as it's an issue for him, I think it could be a limit on his snaps, a limitation on his snaps, unfortunately, because I love to watch the guy run the ball.
Yeah, no, he's electric when he has the ball in his hands. But yeah, like you said, coming out of the backfield, you want to be able to catch the easy ones, especially in an offense where, you know, the one thing that we have seen when Fields has been out on the field is he's been still running for his life in the fucking
Yeah.
preseason, which is just like, I know I talked a few weeks ago about kind of like the David Carr or the Andrew Luck type situation where it's like he is just getting his head knocked off week in week out to where it's like I don't even want to do this anymore. I know it's only year 2, but we don't want it to tread that way. We want to put a quality offensive line around him, and one of the guys that we were talking about pre-show that we've still, despite my hatred for him or disliking of him, he has looked good in camp is Tevin Jenkins. So do you have any insight on how Tevin's played or from what you've seen in camp on him going into this season?
I mean, the only stuff I've actually seen is the preseason games, but I mean, he flashed some real power and nastiness playing guard in this last game. I mean, by no means was anyone putting him into a Pro Bowl after that game. He has a lot to clean up, but he flashed some real people moving ability at that spot that we didn't see at tackle in the first preseason game that he kind of struggled more with at tackle. Just the lateral movement was kind of lacking at tackle. And when you're inside in the phone booth, you don't need to move that same way. Because you're flanked on both sides. You're not covering from where you're standing to the sideline anymore. You're covering from where the center is to where the tackle is. So your ability to move laterally and your discipline to not open up become a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think as the season goes on, if they move him inside to guard, that's something that we'll see him continue to grow and get better with as the season goes on. But again, like you said, just a preseason game, just going through the motions, not crowning him yet, especially not me. I got to see it for a little while in the regular season, and then I'll come around. But
I'm excited to see some more of him at guard because he's got the power, he's got the nastiness that you want at that interior position, and giving him the chance to channel it into a known target essentially. Like there's just a lot more unknown about what's coming at you and what's in front of you and what your assignment is at tackle and there is at guard, I feel like. And being able to channel that into more of a known quantity, I think can really, yeah. I mean, he opened up some running lanes in this last preseason game that were impressive.
And he has the size too, because he was always a really big tackle anyway. So like one thing that you'll notice is tackles and guards have different builds. He may not necessarily have the best guard build because he's a little bit taller, but he still has the weight to play at that position because the defensive tackles in this NFL, the Aaron Donalds of the world, they don't give a fuck about you, dude. Like they will run through your face and they are nasty. But the way I look at it is one thing we can count on this year, hopefully, if Eberflus just knows what to do, and I think Getsy has control of the play calling, so I don't think it'll fall on Matt, is we got to just move Justin around. You can't have him sitting in the backfield at all times because the fact of the matter is the offensive line is going to have weeks where they're just not going to be up to par to get the offense going. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have to adjust. So hopefully – they've been able to use the preseason to kind of do that type of adjustment.
There's not going to be a lot of games this year where you can lean on your O-line to get your offense into a rhythm. Your offense will constantly need to get the O-line into a rhythm, which doesn't might not. Let me explain what I mean.
No, go ahead.
There's not going to be a lot of games where you're going to be able to just come off the bus running because you got hogs up front who are going to open stuff up for you, and then you can pick and choose around how the defense is reacting to that. It's going to be more of a factor of how are you setting up the offensive line to get in that groove where they can start opening up those holes. I know a lot of people are big believers that running the ball a lot early is a way to get your offensive line in that rhythm, especially struggling O-line, because it puts them on attack. It puts them on the offensive. You know, they're going after the defense. They're not taking at the snap. They're not stepping back and waiting at the snap. They're exploding off and going. You know, and it creates that mindset, that feel of we're in charge of the way this game is going. But when you have the Hogs up front, you might not need to start off that heavy because you know your offensive line can flip a switch whenever they want. And the Bears don't have that luxury this year.
Yeah, and I think, too, a lot of it, to even talk to my point about moving Justin around, is even in the running game, use the misdirection and some of the RPO type stuff, because at the end of the day, if say you're on the right hash, run something that has Justin, if he pulls it and tucks it, he has the sideline right there. You know what I'm saying? We know we got to work on his sliding, but just be good in situations. Like, utilize Justin's legs, not to the point where he's going to get, killed out there, because I would hate to see regular season games where Trevor Siemian is the quarterback when we have Justin Fields in the same room. You know what I'm saying? But I just think the offense, like you said, has to grow with this offensive line, but we need to have the receivers overperforming. We can't have Khalil Herbert dropping catches out of the backfield. You have to have, Cole Kmet open over the seam or in the middle of the field. And I don't know. Also, there's a lot that goes into it,
Justin Fields is, my favorite. I don't want to talk bad about Justin Fields, but the throws at and behind the line of scrimmage need to be on target. I mean, it's hard for the easy ones. It's hard for the receivers to help you out when you can't help them out either. He needs to be hitting those guys where he's supposed to, and that's something that I didn't love seeing in the preseason games.
And one thing I'll say, and it's so cliche in football, and it's something that we have failed to do through the last few regimes, is take what the defense gives you. Like, it's a crazy concept to live by in football.
Now, granted, that one in the red zone in this last preseason game,
yeah,
I can live with that because it's 2nd and 4. You just need to make sure you can get 3rd and 4.
Exactly.
You just need to convert that, because I can live with an end zone shot on 2nd and 4.
Yeah.
Because you got another down to live,
Yes. But I just think with everybody doubting us, with the way that they've it doesn't matter if it's the 2nd string or the 3rd string guys or whatever. To me, I think that the culture is changing. And I know that's like, just throw the tinfoil hat on me. Like, that's just me being hyped because I can get hyped for a lot less about the fucking Chicago Bears. But Justin Fields, like we've talked about, he's not going to stink in this league forever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. How many of those good years are the Bears going to get? Can we make him a guy that wants to be a Chicago Bear quarterback for the rest of his life or the rest of his NFL career? That all remains to be seen. But it starts with a year like this, with 0 to no expectations, where you can kind of just go out there and play football. You have a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, maybe some used car, new weapons, not shiny new weapons, but maybe the car that got you through high school or college. They just showed up and they can catch a couple passes. But it can't, I'll say this, it can't get any worse than us being bad with no hope. Because if there's one thing that you know about sports, about being a Bears fan, about being an NFL fan, if you're a fan of any other team, is that in years that for sure, we're not a Super Bowl team or a playoff team like you talked about, it's that hope that we can see Darnell Mooney continue to grow into that number 1 receiver. We can see maybe a 4,000-yard season from Justin Fields, but let's get 3 first, and then we'll go from there. But I don't know. I have been way too bought in on just what I've seen so far in the preseason and in camp, and then just me being an easily influenceable guy about my team, to where it's we're going to be sitting here week 5 and we haven't won a game, and I already know that's how it's going to fucking happen. But that's another conversation for another day. Going back, go ahead.
Ultimately, I think you can see the culture clear as day.
Yeah.
With with the way that the preseason's gone, I mean, it's pretty clear to me they're not committing penalties. They're not making dumb mistakes. They're not making the same mistakes twice. They're going out there and playing the game the way it's supposed to be played. And I think that's a huge testament to the coaches and the culture they're building there, and the players for stepping up and taking care of their business.
Yeah, and one guy too that we haven't talked about yet, and I think I'll mess up his name, but I think it's like Al Qadim Muhammad.
I think you nailed it.
That's a dude. Yeah, no, he's a dude. He's definitely going to be a good guy to line up more than just in a situational package. Like between him, Gibson, and Robert Quinn, presumably if we keep him throughout the rest of this year, like I have no worries about really anywhere on the defense until Kyler Gordon doesn't step up. You know what I'm saying? We haven't really seen anything from Kyler Gordon, so I don't know what to expect from him. But
I've got some concerns with the run defense and just their ability to hold the D line's ability to hold up and keep the linebackers clean. I have some concerns with that.
And then too, like with Roquan being a little undersized, that he gets scraped really easily on those plays. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Then you got fucking Phillip Rivers chirping him, and then we're all just mad. But yeah, I think so. We got it's a Saturday game this week, and then you get your week off going into the Niners. I think by all accounts, like the preseason could not have gone any better for the Bears. Because like I told you before we started last week, I was like, halftime of the Chiefs game, I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I know it's not about wins and losses, but like they were down, what was it, like 17-0 or 16-0 or something, and it's just like, or whatever. The number doesn't matter. They were down something to nothing, and I'm sitting here thinking like, we just went through like 3 or 4 years where we just simply refuse to score in first halves of games. You get a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator. You ran Fields and all that for a little while, and then obviously you don't score. They come back, and from the third quarter on in that Chiefs game all the way through the Seahawks game, you just have seen a different identity. The special teams has been on point. There was a special teams touchdown.
I've been very impressed with the special teams.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Even aside from the splash plays, they're on their P's and Q's every play.
And if there's one thing that we've seen as Bears fans with a team that doesn't have a great offense and was carried by their defense, special teams, talking about the Super Bowl team for the Bears, help them out in a lot of games. Now, I'm not calling – don't get ahead of ourselves. I'm not calling Velus Jones, Devin Hester, but I'm saying, like, you look at the dudes in special teams, like the Brendan Iambadejos of the world, the people that were going down and making tackles, which actually, now that I think about that, if we can even get that type of career out of Jack Sanborn, that's still a
what I was talking about too. Yeah, the guys who are doing the blocking and the coverage,
Demarcus Gates,
that's the majority of the guy. Those are who make or break your special teams units more than anything.
Yeah,
And one thing I do like about Velus Jones is a very experienced gunner.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think oftentimes when we talk about football, it's offense, defense, and special teams always goes by the wayside. But one constant that as sad as this sounds that we've seen in our lives as Bears fans is the special teams units have always been good. We've usually always had a good kicker with the exception of like the Cody Parkey years and shit. Like we got to see Robbie Gould for a while, had Paul Edinger for a while before that. You had the Brad Maynard years. Pat O'Donnell's not a person, but Trenton Gill looks to be a dude at the punter. He has had some good punts in the punt in the punt season, but in the preseason.
I just hope the Bears aren't punting on a 4th and 3 from the 50-yard line that often.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no. When they're in the gray area, that 40 to 40, I'd like to see some aggression because what do you have to lose? But
that's how you're going to win games this year is those moments.
Exactly, and in rising up in those moments, and then we got Scott from Iowa in the comments. The Bears are making the playoffs. See, Scott is also very easily influenced by some good preseason play, couple hype videos, and just the Bears going into Seattle and making them their bitch in front of the 12th man. So, hey, I've seen crazier things, but I'm all the way in if that happens. We'll be here to cover it. I mean, as a podcast, I think we were here for this. We were definitely here for the loss to the Saints. We were here for the Cody Parkey loss too, I think, unfortunately. But we will not. The next time we cover a playoff game, you hear me right now, Scott, it will be a win. You can come back and clip me on this. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but going by Quintin and what Quintin said, he said by next year or the year after, and Quintin's the smarter of the bunch, I'm going to go out and get a nice little playoff ticket next year, but not this year. So he said slap bet. If you know, ask Buzz. I'm going to have to ask Buzz on that, but hey, the Bears to make the playoffs is probably a very nice plus money bet that if we start the season 3-1, you could probably sit there and say, hey, I'm the smartest man in the room. But you got to remember.
Crazier things have happened. I'm not saying count on it, but it's the NFL. Weird stuff happens.
Just a little sprinkle. Definitely not a big one.
Who had the Bengals in the Super Bowl last year this time? Do not take that as me saying the Bears are going to make the Super Bowl. But I think the Bears making the playoffs might be equivalent to the Bengals getting to the AFC Championship.
I was going to say the Bengals had quite possibly the longest odds that we've seen in a while to get to the Super Bowl. I want to see if they have what the Bears playoff market is, because that's got to be plus 500 if they only have them at 7 wins.
Like that.
Hold on, where's this?
It's something strong.
Some strong, as Jameis would say. I saw it. Okay, so to make the playoffs is plus 400 on Bet Rivers. That's kind of low. Yeah, I think
they're playing it safe. It should be 600, 700, but
the over 6.5.
Taking a hell of a big on that one.
The over 6.5 is plus 150.
Yeah, then playoffs should be more than 400.
That just means they're making the playoffs, Scott from Iowa. I don't know how else to cut it. And then, dude, oh my God, they have stage of elimination. Defeated in wild card to get to the Super Bowl. $10 to lose in the Super Bowl. $10 wins you $1,500. So there you go. A little Rex Grossman year. Get after it. But going into the Browns, I didn't even really – I saw the first quarter of their game on Sunday against the Eagles, and I do know that it was not the ones right away, so I would expect somewhat of the same where it'll just be 2s and 3s and they're bottom of the roster guys. But one thing I do know about the Browns is despite their record last year, they still do have a pretty deep roster. So it should be a good game, good competition for our guys. Obviously, doesn't matter if we win. Obviously, we want to win, but it is what it is if we don't. Yeah. Do you have a couple guys that you have in mind that you want to see a nail in the coffin performance to make sure that they're on this roster?
Demarcus Gates.
Yes.
I'd love to see a big game from Lamar Jackson just because I love his potential, but he has not had a great preseason. So I'm just not sure if that's going to happen, but I'm rooting for him. I'd love to see Charles Snowden make some more splash plays out there too. I think he's played solid, but I'd like to see him kind of make more plays.
Exactly.
And then, honestly, I just want to see Kamara and Duke Redway keep doing what they've been doing because it's been solid. And number 96, LaKale London.
From Western.
Yeah, because he's the third guy. That second, third string D line they've been running out there has been wreaking some havoc, and I have to think at least one of them has to be a rotational guy eventually if they're doing that well out there against the 2s and 3s, but it could also mean absolutely nothing. But I'd like to see one of those 3 guys really blow up.
Well, it's look at just the history of the random extra guy on this defensive line. The most recent one that I can think of is Roy Robertson Harris, right? He got to go play at Jacksonville. Israel Adonijah was more or less like a special teams guy in the past that turned out to be a very solid anchor on that Bears defensive line. So if there's one thing about that position specifically that we've seen over the course of the Bears history is like they'll take a shot on that small school guy. And for whatever reason, we've had some glorious
Nick Williams
defensive
had that
lines. Yeah,
big
Nick
year
Williams
here.
was a dog. Yeah, and he
Yeah.
got paid to go to Detroit. And he hasn't been, I don't think, as good in Detroit, but
Yeah.
we got what we needed out of him. I want to see the next guy that I want to see that's like the random D-line guy from a small school, and everyone that listens to this show knows it. I want to see that 10-sack year out of Travis Gibson this year. And I think he's kind of grown into the NFL game. He was a little bit undersized when he showed up in the NFL, but new role, different type of defense. Maybe it'll play to his strength, maybe not, but I'm really hoping to see big things out of him this year. And then going back to this week, as someone who said Daz Newsom's very polarizing, like for his sake, I want to see him have one of the games that he had when Sam Howell was at quarterback, that type of performance. I don't want to see him drop a single fucking pass or muff a single punt. I want to see him play how we saw him play in college because that's what I want for him in the NFL. And he could be a guy that maybe turns out to be a value that we picked that didn't get to play their rookie season but was able to come back the next year and at least right his wrongs. And moving on to the defensive side of the ball, like you said, Demarcus Gates, someone that I've watched for many years in these random spring football leagues, happy to see that he's on like my team because those guys, like for example, this past weekend, Cavante Turpin with the Cowboys, that guy played in all those different spring leagues, 86-yard punt, 98-yard kickoff return. So those leagues have talent too, and you don't always have to be the traditional draft pick or free agent, if you will, to find a spot on an NFL roster. And even if it's just in that special teams role, like, fuck it. Better than not being an NFL team, you know what I'm saying? So I'd like to see him continue to play well to the point where he solidifies a spot. If it's not already done, my guy Jackie Sanborn, want to see more from him. That guy is electric, dude. I don't know how he slid as far as he did because for whatever reason, they're extremely harsh on linebackers that like perform at a high level in college that maybe are 220 or 230. You know what I'm saying? That maybe just a little bit too tiny, but it's like they know the position. At the very worst, you get a special teams guy. But offensively, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Like it's going to be all Simeon and Nathan Peterman's tryout for his next team because he's going to be gone. Treston Ebner's another guy that I'll say we've seen good things so far in the preseason, and I want to see that trend continue to the point where maybe they kind of use him in like a Tariq Cohen type of role, like a third back. Yeah, like a third back that comes out to give you a change of pace or just to keep the defense on their toes.
He again with him though, he needs to clean up that pass pro.
Yes. And then the receiver position outside of Newsome, I just want to see like the Pettises of the world shine. I want to see, that guy that wants to be the third and fourth receiver step up. I don't know who it's going to be because it's so close.
I'd love to see Simba Webster make some plays.
Yeah.
Because he's made like 2 or 3 in the first 2 games. If he makes a few, it can make that decision tough at wide receiver.
Exactly, because all those guys they're all pretty much in the same category of player. None of those guys are overwhelmingly good. They're obviously not overwhelmingly bad because they're at least in camp, but I just think you don't have guys that are above average at that position. We don't know what will end up happening with N'Keal Harry because of his injury. You don't know if he gets cut or if he is kept around. Maybe they liked what they saw enough to the point where they keep him around and tread some of his tires in week 8 and beyond. But
I also wouldn't be surprised if someone they like becomes available and all the other
very true.
Are pushed aside and they go after not like a superstar, but a guy who's done it in the NFL.
Will Fuller's still out there, and I know people will say, "Hey, Brandon, that's the Notre Dame fan in you that's talking." But when Will Fuller is on his game,
6 games a year he plays.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. He's great. And, I mean, fuck it, why not? He is available. You can probably get him for cheap. Maybe you don't get him for the whole season, but he's a guy that can make plays and complement Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields. But that is all stuff that we can discuss in the week between the end of the preseason and week one against the San Francisco 49ers. Going into this week, it's, like I said, the Cleveland Browns. I don't even know. I got to double check and see. I don't think it's at home. I think they travel to the shitbox in Cleveland, I believe. Such a terrible state. Hold on.
Hey, it's not Detroit.
It's not even showing me on here. Oh, wait, here's the preseason. They put the preseason at the bottom. Yeah, they're going to Cleveland. Ohio's not a state, whatever. Perfect preseason record on the line. That's all I'm clinging to. That, and obviously the most important thing for the guys that are out there that are making the roster, and even the ones that aren't, because the next 6 months or whatever will be crazy for those guys as well. Everybody stay healthy. Don't want to make it this far in the preseason and, get a ding and not be able to play in the regular season. Or if you're one of those guys that doesn't make the roster and has to stay healthy for a CFL or USFL, you'd hate to see them go down this week. So win, lose, or draw, get back on that plane the same way you got there, and hopefully we can have some questions answered about receiver, cornerback, and running back 3 and beyond with the Darrington Evans and the Tristan Ebners of the world. Do you have any final thoughts going into the Cleveland game, into the end of the preseason?
Get out healthy. That's really the big thing for me. Just, I mean, you might see Riley Reef get some snaps, I imagine, just to kind of get him some game speed before, like, maybe just a series or something, because he hasn't played at all. Maybe there's another guy like that I'm not thinking of, but ultimately for me, it's just get into Cleveland, get out of Cleveland healthy, and we're on to San Francisco.
We're on to San Francisco. Let's go. Yeah, honestly, now that I think about it, I don't even want to see Simeon pass like the first quarter. Like, if you don't have to play him, don't play him at all. You know what I'm saying? Because it's very clear.
Who was that quarterback we had from South Carolina years ago? Shaw.
Connor Shaw.
Connor Shaw. Let's see a Connor Shaw game out of Trevor Simeon or out of
Nathan Peterman.
I mean,
yeah, because you got to think it's his last opportunity to kind of wow someone to say, "Hey, pick me up for your practice squad," or to maybe play backup for you.
Yeah.
Or his swan song, because John Gruden's no longer around to give him a contract. We don't know, but what I do know is I like Trevor Simeon as our backup because, I mean, just look at the way he handled it with the Saints last year. I mean, the Saints were an offensively challenged team with, I'm pretty sure, a banged-up Alvin Kamara down the stretch. So for them to even be in a position, like they far exceeded expectations with a quarterback that many people have written off, and he's an Illinois guy, so you can't complain.
Yeah.
All right,
he's
so
smart. He went to Northwestern.
Absolutely. So we got 2 things in the comments. The Lobs at the Ravens are 22-0 in their last 22 preseason games, and the Bears are 2-0 in their last 2 preseason games. It's the start of something. That is correct. Can't go 22-0 in the preseason.
What was the last time? Did the Bears lose their last preseason game last year?
I'm not 100% sure.
I wonder when the last time the Bears lost a preseason game was. What the full streak is if you take the coach handle off of it.
I know for sure they lost to the Bills last year because I was there. It was awful, but I don't know what happened those weeks after. Scott Crawford, or Scott from Iowa, for those of you on Twitter, showcase Peterman and trade him to the Browns for a draft pick. I like the way you think. Why not? I mean, we don't know what's going to be happening at the quarterback position for half of the season. Jacoby Brissett's going to probably be the starter. Why not throw Peterman in the mix to throw some practice squad reps or to emulate which quarter, maybe play some scout team. Who knows? Alop's the analytical department of the show said he's going to go ahead and look it up. So we'll try and fill some time until then. But yeah, you got to think they definitely lost to the Bills. So at the most, it's a 4-game winning streak. So it could go. It's either 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the way that, and honestly too, you know what? Another thing we haven't talked about at all. And I know it's probably not like too pressing in the locker room. But the Browns absolutely fucking embarrassed us last year. So, like,
Yeah.
at the very least, go out there and play a respectable game. You know,
Yeah.
they could literally tie for all we care. It could be 21-21. I don't care. Just don't go out there and look the way that they did the last time that we went to Cleveland. And a lot came back, so 3-0 in their last 3. So this will look to go perfect preseason for this year, and then obviously it goes back one game to last year. So that would be pretty cool. Obviously, it'd be a lot cooler in the regular season, but yeah, Scott's referring to last year against Buffalo as the Mitch Trubisky revenge game. Who, I don't know, Mitch probably going to be the starter in Pittsburgh, and honestly, not to make this Trubisky on tap, but the Steelers, they probably have as good a chance as anybody to win that division, I think. I don't know. I want to see Mitch do well, but they got some dogs, and we'll see what happens. That's a tough division. But
I'm all aboard the Lamar Jackson train.
Lamar Jackson, yeah.
I think the Ravens are going to steamroll some people this year.
Hey, they took a year off. They had a lot of injuries. Why not?
Lamar wants to be paid. Man wants to be paid.
On the topic of being paid, that is one thing that we did not talk about, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the show for today. Roquan Smith has not received his extension. He has showed up. He made the trip to Seattle, was down there on the sidelines during the game, and the holdout is over. No contract deal was reached, and it's concerning because at least someone that's, seen like the Earl Thomas type situation as a fan of Roquan, you want to see him get his money handled and taken care of. And then, too, it's like you look at it, it's like if he gets hurt this year, well, not getting his full extension, he's going to always hold that over the Bears' head and probably want out. You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, if he gets hurt, I'm betting they still franchise tag him.
Yeah.
He gets another shot. Unless it's like a ruptured Achilles or something. I don't really see a way that he's not franchise tagged after this year.
Knocking on wood for even putting Roquan and Hurt in the same sentence. But those are things you got to think about, dude. He plays defense the way he plays. You want to see those type of deals get done. But roster as currently constructed, I think will be a lot more competitive than people give it credit for. We'll be here to cover it for you guys. We'll be back on Monday to recap the Browns game and then kind of go through where we think our predictions are for the final roster, and then we'll have a little bit of a break and we'll be right onto San Francisco week, which I am very excited for. The NFL is the best time of the year. We got week 0 in college football. We got some Hawaii football, some Northwestern, some Illinois football, some Vandy. So it's about that time of the year. The weather's about to turn. We're about to get the little brown leaves, the pumpkin beers, all that type of shit. It's about to get real fall in here. So best time of the year. We'll be here to cover the Bears season. Hopefully they can find a way to win more football games than not. We'll be back with you guys on Monday, and bear down.
Bear down.